Okay, today we're going to talk about something that, let's be honest, drives all of us a little crazy. It's our weird, fascinating, and yeah, often frustrating relationship with details. Why do we get so tangled up in them? Well, let's get into it. You ever have one of those days you're totally freaking out over a tiny typo in an email you already sent, but that massive project deadline that's breathing down your neck? You're barely thinking about it. It's such a strange but super common feeling. And today, we're going to unpack exactly why our brains do that. So, let's start by digging into what we're calling the detail dilemma. Think of it like a two-sided trap our minds can fall into. We either completely miss the details that are actually important, or we obsess over the ones that really don't matter at all. First, let's define the word that's at the very heart of this. That word is finicky. And it's perfect, right? Because it describes two things at once. It describes those little details that demand so much of our care and precision, and it also describes us, our own attitude when we get totally bogged down in them. This whole finicky situation sets the stage for the two extremes of our problem. All right, so let's tackle the first side of this dilemma, the hidden danger. This is what happens when we overlook the details that actually matter. And it's something our brains are literally wired to do, but man, it can have some pretty spectacular consequences. It's such a classic trap, isn't it? We scan a document, we breeze through a set of instructions, and we miss one tiny little thing. But that one thing, it isn't just a detail. It's the linchpin. It's the one piece holding the entire thing together. And when we miss it, well, the whole structure can come crashing down. You could almost call this the butterfly effect of details. Most critical piece of information almost never waves a giant red flag. Nope, it hides in plain sight, looking just like every other normal, boring detail around it. And our brain, which is always trying to be efficient, just brushes right over it. And that can set off a chain reaction that leads to some major trouble down the line. But here's the really interesting part. This habit of skimming over things isn't actually a flaw in our design. Our brain's autopilot is an intentional, energy-saving mechanism. It's supposed to be a feature, freeing up our mental energy so we can focus on the big picture. So the real trick is figuring out when this super helpful feature flips and becomes a really harmful bug. On the one hand, it's amazing for efficiency. But when we're tired or we're stressed, that same feature can malfunction. We start skimming over not just the fluff, but the really crucial stuff too. And that's the moment the feature becomes a bug and, well, that's when blunders happen. But ignoring details, that's only half the story. Now let's flip the coin over and look at the other side. The perfect trap of getting completely lost in the weeds, focusing on tiny details so much that we miss, well, everything else. This happens when we zoom in on these tiny, insignificant little tasks as a way to avoid the much bigger, much scarier problem that's staring us right in the face. It feels productive, but if we're being honest with ourselves, it's usually just a very clever form of procrastination. To really get this, I want you to picture something. Imagine you're in a room, and you spot one single tiny speck of dust on a table, and you become completely fixated on it. While right behind you, the entire room is engulfed in flames. That is exactly what's happening when we obsess over minor details. We're meticulously cleaning that one speck of dust while the real, urgent problem is raging on, totally ignored. This brings us to a quote that just nails this whole idea perfectly. Perfection is just hesitation wearing a fancy hat. It sounds witty, but it's actually a pretty powerful warning about how we trick ourselves. So what does that actually mean for us? It means we use the noble-sounding goal of getting something just right as a perfect excuse to put off making a real decision. Chasing that last 1% of perfection. That's not progress. That's paralysis. And a lot of the time, it's just our fear of being imperfect, wearing a costume we call carefulness. Okay, so we've laid out the two extremes, either ignoring the details that matter or obsessing over the ones that don't. How in the world do we escape this trap? The answer is all about finding your focus. The real solution isn't about choosing a side, becoming either a master of details or a big picture-only thinker. The real skill is learning to recognize which mode you need to be in and when. It all comes down to developing self-awareness and finding a balance. So how do you actually find that balance? Well, first, you have to consciously confront your autopilot. Make an active choice to be present, to not let your mind just drift. Next, when you feel yourself slipping into one extreme or the other, just pause. Take a few deep breaths to ground yourself. And finally, start training yourself to listen for the important clues. When your gut tells you, hey, this small detail might have bigger consequences, that is your cue to lean in and pay way more attention. So, as we wrap this up, I'm going to leave you with one final thought to chew on. In your own life, what fancy hat is your hesitation wearing? Is it called doing more research, or maybe careful planning, or is it that classic quest for perfection? Because just recognizing the disguise, that's always the first step to finally taking it off.